Hey guys, today for my movie review, I'm going to be reviewing Hotel Transylvania 2. This is the sequel to the 2012 film about a group of monsters who run a hotel. We have Dracula, the Mummy, Frankenstein, Wolfman. All these characters are running this hotel, specifically Dracula. But in this new film, Hotel Transylvania 2, Dracula's daughter, who they've kind of settled their differences from the first movie, now has a grandson, and this is her son making it Dracula's grandson. And what's kind of um, strange for everybody at first is they don't quite know if he's completely human or half human, half vampire. And throughout the course of the film, Dracula does his best to make sure that his new grandson is indeed a vampire. And that way, if his father, who obviously becomes significant later in the movie, if he were to ever meet the grandson, obviously he'd be proud that his grandson, his great grandson for him, would also be a vampire. So throughout the course of the film, Dracula and his friends basically do a series of tests to the grandson to make sure that he is indeed a vampire, and if he's not, obviously those series of tests will prove that he's just human. But the problem is, if he is just human, Dracula's daughter Mavis, who's voiced by Selena Gomez, wants to raise him with the father, who was voiced by Andy Samberg in the first film, also in a human city or town, so that way he doesn't have to grow up around the monster since he is human. Then that way he wouldn't have to feel so out of place amongst the monsters. So it's basically a movie where these characters have to decide, is he human, is he vampire, and if he is indeed just human, then the daughter will probably just raise him in a town or city somewhere and then away from the monsters. But if he is indeed a vampire, obviously he'll grow up along with the monsters, just like Mavis did in the first movie. So overall, guys, I actually really liked Hotel Transylvania 2 a lot. I actually think though it's not miles better than the first movie, I actually think it is a better film than the first movie. I think it's a better executed film. I think the characters definitely emphasize, who they are. The Mummy feels like the Mummy. Frankenstein is given more characteristics that makes him feel like Frankenstein. Dracula feels more like Dracula in this movie, and these characters have, because we've seen them two times around now, they also have a bigger personality and bigger background than they did in just the first movie. So I think that's another thing that this sequel definitely took advantage of, is the fact that this is the second time around we've seen these characters and that we can make them grow and develop more. So for my positives of Hotel Transylvania 2, like I said, this is a slightly better film than the first film. Not miles better, but I think as far as, who these characters are, how they grow throughout the movie, what their character arcs are, how they resolve those character arcs, I think the grandson was a lot of fun. Don't quite know the child actor who voiced the grandson in this, but just a ton of fun to watch. It was fun to see him kind of decide for himself if he is more so human than vampire or more so vampire than human. Just a really fun time with this character, so huge thumbs up. Like I said, I do like this one better than the first one. This film also has really good animation. I'm not just saying that to be nice, because the first film had great animation as well. But I think what makes Hotel Transylvania 2 so good in the animation department is when Mavis and the kid who's played by Andy Samberg, when they go to California for Mavis to meet more people rather than just her being around monsters all the time, it really does feel like something you would see in California. It really does look like the sky and the water and the land and the sand. Like everything looks so realistic in this environment. It's almost crazy that some of these environments you almost have to remind yourself that you're looking at animation just because it does look so realistic now. So huge thumbs up to the animation. I really liked what they did here with that. This is also a very fun film to watch. I never felt bored watching this movie. It was just a ton of fun. And in a way, I think it's a more fun film to watch than the first one. I think the first one is fun, but the second one I think is even more fun to watch. And I did mention this earlier, I'm going to bring it up again. The monster's abilities really are applied to the story more, rather than just hinted at like what they did with the first movie. Like, for example, the blob monster, we actually get to see him as a blob monster. We get to see what he does as a blob, what he can do, how he can stretch himself, what he can and can't do. Same with Dracula, same with Frankenstein, same with the Wolfman. The Wolfman, they also emphasize with him that he is part dog. He is in the same species as dogs are, and as a result, he does very much behave like a dog when somebody throws a frisbee or somebody throws a bone or somebody gives him a treat. He acts like a dog, and I think they really emphasize the factor that he is the Wolfman also. I also thought it was a fun grandson character that they gave Dracula in this movie. It kind of reminded me of the Jack character arc from The Incredibles. For those who've seen The Incredibles, you know how in that movie they didn't really quite know if he had a superpower, if he was just completely human. Throughout the course of the film, they have to figure that out. And so in Hotel Transylvania 2, it's kind of the same thing, except with a vampire. They have to figure out, is he just vampire? Is he human? If he is just human, how are we going to handle all this? And so it's just a lot of fun with that. There's also some great voice acting here. Everybody from the first film, once again, did great voice acting here. Really shocked with Selena Gomez. I really didn't think she would be this good of a voice actress, but maybe this is the right path for her. Maybe she's better off with voice acting over live action acting. I think she really has become this character, like I mentioned earlier, because this is the second time we've seen her character. She's more developed, more grown up. You can definitely see the motherly side to her now that she has a child. Just really great voice acting. And two additions that we had in this movie is Dana Carvey and Mel Brooks. Really shocked to see Dana Carvey do a good voice acting performance. I haven't seen him since Master of Disguise, and obviously that's one of the worst films I've ever seen. But Mel Brooks is great here. But yeah, really, really good performances overall from everybody. Dana Carvey, Mel Brooks, all the returning voice cast in the first film. Just great voice acting in this movie. For my negatives, I think the story does kind of lose its momentum after the halfway point in the movie. I would say roughly towards the end of the second act is when the film kind of loses steam. It is still a fun film to watch. Like I said, the entire runtime is fun. But it does kind of lose its story momentum. It kind of loses the fact that this is a story and it has to have, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And, story points that match up with those earlier story points. Because I think by the halfway point, they're kind of like, okay, we'll just have a lot of fun now. I think they kind of lost the story momentum halfway into the movie. There's also some occasional flat jokes in the movie. One joke that really stood out to me is really flat. In fact, nobody in the theater was laughing at all, and I kind of got the impression that they wanted us to laugh at this. Mavis rides a bike for the first time in this human city, and she's able to do these big stunts, and she can fly and all this other stuff. They tried to make it funny. It really wasn't funny. It really fell flat really quickly, and there was unfortunately a couple jokes throughout the movie that kind of played out like that, but there's also some jokes here that really work pretty well, but there is some flat jokes nonetheless. I also thought more so by the third act specifically, I thought the film maybe got a little too dark. The reason why I say that is maybe it's just the audience I was in. Some of the kids are actually getting kind of frightened by the bad assistants that Mel Brooks's character has, who plays the father of Dracula in this. They are kind of creepy little guys, or I shouldn't say little guys, they're actually big characters to these other characters. But it kind of went in a dark direction. They kind of did something a little too risky for a PG film, I thought. Maybe that's just me being the grown up and seeing these young kids getting frightened by these characters. Maybe that was the intention. But I don't know. I think because the first film was not really frightening at all, like it was just monster characters, this film, took the more literal approach by the third act. Maybe that's a little too much. Just pointing it out there. But overall, I'm going to give Hotel Transylvania 2 an 8.5 out of 10. This is a really fun film. Like I said, I like it a little bit more than the first film, which is actually kind of saying a lot because I like the first film a lot too. I just thought they did more with the characters this time. They have bigger character arcs, more things added to their personality. The grandson's a lot of fun. The grandson was kind of the make it or break it feature of the movie because they have so much screen time on him. Really fun character. But like I did say, that the story does kind of lose its momentum by the halfway point. There is some occasional flat jokes, and it does get a little too dark for the kids by the third act. So overall, like I said, 8.5 out of 10. Really good movie. If you like the first Hotel Transylvania, I think you'll have a lot of fun with this movie. I think, like I said, it is slightly better than the first one. If you didn't really care for the first one, I really don't know what to say. You might not like this one as well, just because it is very similar to the first movie as well. Um, but really fun movie. Really liked it a lot. 8.5 out of 10. Be sure to check it out if you like the first one also.